The humidity hit me the second I stepped off the plane in Cebu. August 2023. I was 67 years old and I'd just done something I never thought I'd do. I'd left Charlotte, left everything familiar, left the empty house that still smelled like Susan's perfume even though she'd been gone 4 years. I came here looking for something, purpose maybe, or just a reason to wake up in the morning that wasn't another day of silence and reruns. I'd spent 40 years building things, homes, office buildings, strip malls. I knew construction. I knew how to read blueprints and manage crews and turn raw land into something people could use. That was my value. That's who I was. But retirement had stripped that away and I didn't know who Douglas was anymore without a job site to run. The business networking event was at a hotel overlooking the water. I went because the flyer said foreign investment opportunities and I thought, why not? I had money. I had skills. Maybe I could build something here. Something that mattered. I was standing by the buffet table, trying to figure out what half the food was when she walked up. "You look lost," she said. Her English was perfect, confident. She was young, maybe late 20s, professional dress, hair pulled back. She had this smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. "I'm Celestine Salazar," she said, extending her hand. "But everyone calls me Tina. You're American?" I shook her hand. "Douglas, North Carolina. And yeah, I'm definitely lost." She laughed. "Not at me, with me. There's a difference." "What brings you to Cebu, Douglas?" I told her the truth. That I was retired. That I'd built things my whole life. That I was looking for a project, something meaningful. She listened, really listened. Not the way people do when they're waiting for their turn to talk. When I finished, she said, "Can I buy you a coffee? I think I might have something you'd be interested in." We sat outside on the hotel terrace. The sun was setting over the water and everything felt possible. Tina told me she was a business development consultant, that she helped foreign investors navigate Philippines regulations. "It's complicated here," she said. "The laws are different. Foreigners can't just buy property and build whatever they want. You need local partnerships. You need someone who understands the system." I asked her what kind of projects she worked on. She pulled out her phone and showed me photos. A small resort in Moalboal, beachfront, half finished. "This is one I'm working on now," she said. "The previous investor pulled out. Family emergency back in Australia. But the permits are in place. The land is secured. It just needs capital and construction expertise." I looked at the photos. The location was beautiful. The kind of place tourists would pay good money to stay. "What's the investment?" I asked. She smiled. "That depends. How involved do you want to be? This isn't passive. This is a partnership. You'd be part of the process, making decisions, overseeing construction, building something from the ground up." I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Excitement, purpose. "Tell me more," I said. We talked for 2 hours. She explained the structure. In the Philippines, foreigners can own up to 40% of a corporation. Filipinos must own the majority. But as partners, she said, we make decisions together. 50-50 on everything that matters. I handle local permits and contractors. You handle construction oversight and capital investment. Fair? It sounded fair. It sounded exactly like what I'd been looking for. Before we left that night, Tina looked me in the eye and said, "Kuya, Douglas, I'm not looking for a quick deal. I want to build something that lasts. Something we can both be proud of. If that's what you want too, then let's do this right. Kuya." I learned later it means older brother. A term of respect. I shook her hand and said, "Let's build something." I should have known. I should have seen it. But I didn't. I just saw hope. The next 6 weeks felt like I'd found my second act. Tina and I met almost every day. She introduced me to contractors. We walked the property in Moalboal together. She translated conversations, explained permit processes, helped me open a Philippines bank account. "You'll need this to make payments," she said. Everything has to flow through local banking. It made sense. Every night I'd go back to my rented condo and review the documents she'd given me: property surveys, permit applications, construction timelines. It all looked legitimate, professional. In early September, she called me. "Kuya, we need to move on the property deposit. The seller has another buyer interested. If we don't secure it now, we'll lose it." I transferred $50,000. 2 days later, she sent me photos of the signed deed. "We did it," she said. "The land is ours." Ours. That word felt good. By October, I'd wired another $75,000. Permits, materials, contractor deposits. Tina always had documentation, always had explanations, and she was always available, always responsive. One evening, she invited me to dinner at her family's home. It was a small house in a neighborhood I wouldn't have found on my own. Her mother, Rosario, met me at the door. She was maybe 50. Kind eyes. She hugged me like I was family. "Thank you," she said through Tina's translation. "Thank you for helping my daughter, for believing in her." We ate adobo and rice, and Rosario told stories about raising Tina alone after her husband died, about how hard she'd worked to put Tina through university, about how proud she was. I felt honored to be there, trusted. When we left that night, Tina touched my arm and said, "You see, Kuya, you're not just an investor, you're family now." I believed her. God help me. I believed every word. The partnership agreement was signed in late October. Attorney's office in Cebu City. Tina had arranged everything. The lawyer walked us through the documents: corporate structure, ownership percentages, investment terms. It was dense. Legal language that made my head spin. "This is standard," the lawyer said. "Everything is according to Philippines corporation law." I looked at Tina. She nodded. "It's good, Kuya. This protects both of us." I signed. We shook hands. The lawyer smiled. "Congratulations on your partnership." Walking out of that office, I felt proud. I'd done something. I'd built something. I wasn't just a lonely old man killing time anymore. I was Douglas, business partner in a beachfront resort. I had purpose again. The cracks started small. November, Tina missed a meeting, then another. She'd text apologies. Family emergency, permit office delays. I'd reschedule. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I wanted to visit the construction site, see the progress. "Not yet, Kuya," she said on the phone. "It's not safe. The workers aren't ready for foreign oversight. You understand. Give it another few weeks." I didn't understand, but I didn't want to push. I didn't want to be the ugly American demanding things. So I waited. In early December, I asked for updated financial records. She sent spreadsheets, line items, miscellaneous permits, contractor advances, infrastructure development. The numbers were vague. I called her. "Tina, I need to see actual receipts, invoices. I need to know where the money's going." There was a pause. Then her voice changed, just slightly. "Kuya, you have to trust me. This is how business works here. Everything isn't like America. There are processes, relationships. Not everything comes with a printed receipt." I felt a flash of shame, like I was being culturally insensitive. "I'm not questioning you," I said. "I just want to understand." "Then trust me," she said. "Haven't I earned that?" I backed off. That night, lying in bed, I felt a knot in my stomach, a tightness I couldn't explain. I told myself I was being paranoid, controlling. She'd done nothing wrong. Stop looking for problems. But I couldn't sleep. 2 days later, I wired another $30,000. "Urgent construction delays," Tina had said. "If we don't pay now, the contractors will walk." I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't let our project fall apart because I was too cheap or too suspicious. So I sent the money. And I tried to ignore the voice in my head that whispered, "You're making a mistake." I met Mark Sullivan in mid-December. I'd gone to a beach bar in Mactan. Just needed to clear my head. He was sitting alone nursing a San Miguel, American accent, weathered face. He looked like he'd been here a while. "Mind if I sit?" I asked. He gestured to the empty stool. We talked. Small talk at first. Where you from? How long you been here? Then he asked, so what brought you to the Philippines? I told him about the resort, about Tina, about the partnership. I probably sounded proud. Mark's expression changed. He took a long drink of his beer. You got everything in writing, right? In your name? I nodded. Yeah, we signed a partnership agreement. It's all legal. He didn't look convinced. Let me ask you something. Is the property in your name? Can you walk onto that land tomorrow and show a deed with Douglas written on it? I hesitated. It's in the corporation's name. That's how it works here. Foreigners can't own land directly. Mark nodded slowly. Right. And who controls the corporation? I felt defensive, angry even. We're partners, 50-50 on decisions. But who legally owns the majority shares? Mark asked. I didn't answer, because I didn't actually know. Mark leaned back. Look, man, I'm not trying to rain on your parade. I hope I'm wrong, but I've been here 8 years. I've seen this before. Another guy, American, lost 200 grand in a resort deal just like yours. Turned out his partner owned everything. He was just listed as a consultant, no legal standing at all. I stood up. Tina's not like that. I've met her family. We have a lawyer. This is legitimate. Mark raised his hands. I hope you're right, brother. I really do. Just make sure you know what you signed. That's all I'm saying. I left the bar. But I couldn't shake what he'd said. That night I tried calling Tina. It went to voicemail. I texted her, "Can we meet tomorrow? I have some questions about the ownership documents." She didn't respond. Not that night, not the next day, and that knot in my stomach turned to ice. I decided to visit the construction site. I didn't tell Tina. I just hired a driver and went. Early morning, January 2024. The drive to Moalboal took 2 hours. When we arrived, I saw the property. There were workers there, but not many, maybe 5 or 6, and the progress looked minimal, just foundation work. Nothing like what $155,000 should have built. Then I saw her, Tina. She was standing near a truck talking to a man. He was maybe 40, confident, expensive sunglasses, gold watch. They were laughing, close, too close. When Tina saw me, her face went cold. All the warmth drained out of it in an instant. She walked over fast. "Kuya, what are you doing here?" I tried to smile. I wanted to see the progress, see what we've built. The man walked up behind her. He looked at me like I was a stray dog. "This is Jimmy Calderon," Tina said. "He's a contractor consultant, helping with logistics." Jimmy didn't offer his hand, just nodded once and walked away. Tina's jaw was tight. "Kuya, I told you not to come here yet. You're disrupting the workflow. The workers get nervous with foreigners watching them." I felt small, embarrassed, like I'd done something wrong. "I'm sorry. I just wanted to see what my investment is building." "Your investment?" she said, then caught herself. "Our investment. But you need to trust the process, Kuya. You can't just show up unannounced." I left. But I couldn't stop thinking about the way Jimmy had looked at me, the way Tina's face had changed when she saw me, the way they'd been standing together, laughing, like they shared a secret. That night I did something I'm ashamed of. I hired a private investigator, a local guy Mark recommended. I gave him photos of Tina and Jimmy. I gave him the corporation name. I gave him everything. "Find out who they are," I said. "Find out what's really going on." He said it would take a week. Those 7 days were the longest of my life. The investigator's report came back on January 15th. I read it sitting in my condo. Every word felt like a punch to the gut. Jimmy Calderon wasn't a contractor consultant. He was Tina's boyfriend. Had been for 3 years. They lived together in a condo in Cebu City. A condo the investigator believed was purchased with my money. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the corporate structure. The resort property was registered under a Filipino corporation called Salazar Holdings. Tina owned 60%. Jimmy owned 20%. I owned nothing. I was listed as a consultant investor. No shares, no voting rights, no legal claim to anything. According to Philippines law, foreigners can't own land. They can own up to 40% of a corporation. But Tina had structured it so I wasn't even a shareholder. I was a funding source. That's all I'd ever been. $155,000 gone, siphoned into accounts I had no access to. My hands were shaking. I couldn't breathe. Everything I'd believed, everything I'd trusted, it was a lie, all of it. Mark gave me attorney Benito Cruz's number. I called that same day. Benito's office was small, cluttered. He offered me coffee. I couldn't drink it. I showed him the investigator's report, showed him the partnership agreement I'd signed. He read everything carefully. Then he looked up at me with sad eyes. "Mr. McKnight, I'm very sorry, but you have no legal standing here." I felt numb. What does that mean? It means you signed documents that gave you no ownership. You are listed as a consultant. In Philippines court, you cannot claim the property or the funds. You would need to prove fraud. Intentional deception. That requires evidence of forged documents or explicit misrepresentation. You have neither. You signed voluntarily. She did not forge your signature. But she lied to me, I said. My voice sounded weak, pathetic. She told me we were partners, 50-50. Benito nodded slowly. And yet the documents you signed say otherwise. Did you read them before signing? I had, but I hadn't understood them. I trusted Tina to explain. I'd trusted the lawyer who notarized them. Benito leaned forward. "Mr. McKnight, a court case will take years. It will cost more than you've already lost. And you will almost certainly lose. I'm telling you this as a kindness. The best thing you can do is accept the loss and go home." I sat there, silent, empty. "I can't," I finally said. "I don't have enough money to go home. Not anymore." I tried to leave the Philippines in late January, but my visa situation was a mess. I'd been here 5 months on a tourist visa. I needed an extension or an exit clearance. Both required fees I could barely afford. My savings were almost gone. I had maybe $8,000 left. Not enough for a legal fight. Not enough for a plane ticket and starting over in Charlotte. I was trapped. I texted Tina, "Please, just give me something back. Anything. I'm stuck here." She responded 2 hours later. "You signed the papers, Kuya. Business is business. You should go home." I stared at that message. Kuya. She still called me that. Like it meant something. Like we were still family. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I just sat there, numb. I went to the immigration office in Cebu City. Officer Diego Reyes handled my case. He was maybe late 30s, professional but not unkind. "Mr. McKnight, you've overstayed your tourist visa by 3 weeks. You'll need to pay penalties and get an exit clearance before you can leave." "How much?" I asked. "Approximately 40,000 pesos, about $700 plus fees for expedited processing if you want to leave within 30 days. I did the math in my head. I could afford it, barely. But then I'd have nothing. No money to restart in Charlotte, no money for first month's rent, no money for anything. "What if I can't pay?" I asked. Reyes looked uncomfortable. "Then you remain here until you can. If you continue to overstay, there are fines, possible detention." "I don't recommend that, sir." I thanked him and left, walked out into the heat and the traffic and the noise. I was 67 years old, alone in a foreign country, broke, betrayed, trapped. I arranged to meet Tina one last time, February 2nd, a public cafe in Cebu City. I got there early, sat at a table outside, watched people walk by, normal people living normal lives. She arrived 30 minutes late. I saw Jimmy waiting in a car across the street, watching. Tina sat down across from me. She looked uncomfortable. "Kuya, I don't have much time," she said. I didn't yell, didn't cry. I just looked at her. Why? She shifted in her seat. Why what? Why did you do this? Was any of it real? She sighed. You wanted to feel important. You wanted to be the hero. I gave you that. You got what you paid for. I stared at her. I trusted you. She shrugged, like it meant nothing. That was your mistake. She stood to leave, then paused, looked down at me. You're a nice man, Kuya, but nice doesn't survive here. She walked away, got into Jimmy's car. They drove off. I sat there for a long time, staring at the cold coffee in front of me. I didn't cry, didn't rage. I just felt empty, hollowed out, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left just skin and bones. Mark found me a room in a boarding house. 3,000 pesos a month, about $50. It was a concrete box with a foam mattress and a fan, shared bathroom down the hall. But it was cheap, and I needed cheap. He also found me work, teaching English to Filipino kids at a small learning center. 4 hours a day, 15,000 pesos a month, about $250. It wasn't much, but it was something. I sold everything I had left. My laptop, my watch, my wedding ring. That one hurt. I cried when I handed it to the jeweler. Susan had put that ring on my finger 42 years ago, and now I was selling it to survive. I got 6,000 pesos for it, about $100. Every week Mark took me to a small expat support group, 5 or 6 men, all Americans or Brits, all with similar stories. Lost money, broken trust, shattered dreams. One man had lost his pension. Another had lost his house. We'd sit in a circle and talk, no judgment, just truth. I learned I wasn't special. I wasn't alone. This happened all the time. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. In March, I started writing letters to my daughter. Her name is Emily. She's 40, lives in Raleigh. We hadn't spoken much since Susan died. That was my fault. I'd pulled away, shut everyone out. But now I needed her. I needed someone to know what happened. I wrote her everything. The investment, the betrayal, the trap. I told her I was ashamed, that I'd been a fool, that I didn't expect her to help. 3 weeks later, she responded, Dad, I love you. I'm sending money for a plane ticket. Come home. We'll figure out the rest together. I cried when I read that, sat on my foam mattress in that concrete room and sobbed like a child. She sent $1,500, enough for a ticket and the immigration fees. I'd never felt more grateful or more broken. I boarded the plane in early April, 4 months after I'd learned the truth, 8 months after I'd arrived full of hope and purpose. The Philippines disappeared beneath the clouds, and I thought about everything, about Tina, about Jimmy, about the dream that died in paradise. I didn't hate them, not really. I pitied them. What kind of life do you live when you make money destroying people's hope? What does that do to your soul? But I didn't blame them entirely. I blamed myself too. I'd been so desperate to matter, so desperate to feel valuable again, that I'd ignored every red flag. I'd trusted when I should have questioned. I'd believed when I should have verified. That was on me. The money was gone. The dream was gone. But I was still here, still breathing, still alive. Maybe that was enough. Maybe survival is its own kind of victory. The plane landed in Charlotte. Emily was waiting at the gate. The second I saw her, I started crying. She hugged me tight. Didn't let go. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry. She pulled back, looked me in the eye. You're home. That's all that matters. We drove to her house. She'd set up the guest room for me. Stay as long as you need, she said. We'll figure everything out. Together. I nodded, couldn't speak. That night I lay in a real bed, in a quiet room, and thought about the last 8 months. I'd gone to the Philippines, looking for purpose, for meaning, for a second act, and I'd lost everything. My savings, my dignity, my sense of judgment, but I'd gained something too. Humility, gratitude, the knowledge that I could survive the worst thing I'd ever faced. I wasn't trapped in the Philippines. Not really. I was trapped in my own need to matter, my own need to be needed. And now, finally, I was free. Free from the illusion that my value came from what I could build or how much I could give. My value came from being alive, from being loved, from being home. The money was gone. I'd never get it back. But I had my daughter. I had my life. And that was enough. That had to be enough.